My name is Richard Hale, and before I tell you this story, let me say one thing. There is no pain deeper than watching your child suffer while the person who vowed to protect them chooses betrayal instead. I've lived 58 years of my life, but nothing prepared me for the day my daughter, Sophia, was rushed into the intensive care unit. Sophia isn't just my daughter. She's my heart, my reason to wake up every morning. From the moment she was born, I knew my purpose in life was to protect her, to raise her into a woman who could walk through this cruel world with kindness and strength. Raised her alone after her mother passed away when Sophia was only 8. It wasn't easy. I juggled work, bills, late nights making her dinner, and early mornings braiding her hair badly, I'll admit. But every sacrifice was worth it, because every smile she gave me was like sunlight in the darkest of days. So when the doctors told me Sophia's condition was serious, life-threatening, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I remember that night vividly. The cold white lights of the hospital, the smell of antiseptic clinging to the walls, the sound of machines beeping steadily, as if mocking me with their rhythm. I sat by her bed, holding her hand, whispering prayers I wasn't even sure I believed in anymore. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. Tubes and wires surrounded her, and all I could think about was how unfair it was. How could life be so cruel to such a pure soul? But what made my blood boil wasn't just her suffering. It was who wasn't there. Her husband. Mark. Now, let me tell you about Mark. At first, when Sophia brought him home, I wanted to believe he was a good man. He was charming, polished, and he knew how to talk to people. But I saw cracks even then. A selfish streak, an arrogance hidden beneath that practiced smile. Sophia, though, she loved him. She believed in him. And because she was happy, I kept my doubts to myself. I walked her down the aisle, handed her over to him, and told myself, trust her choice, Richard. Trust her happiness. But that night in the hospital, when my daughter was fighting for her life, Mark wasn't by her side. At first, I thought maybe he was at work, or maybe he'd stepped out for food. But hours passed. Midnight turned to dawn, and still no sign of him. I tried calling. No answer. Texting. Nothing. And then, 2 days later, I found out the truth. Mark wasn't grieving. He wasn't pacing the hospital floor like me. He wasn't whispering her name in desperation. No. He was on a yacht. Yes, a yacht. Laughing, drinking, celebrating with his friends, as though nothing in the world mattered. Photos and videos surfaced online, showing him grinning, holding glasses of champagne, surrounded by people who had no idea or didn't care that his wife was clinging to life in the ICU. I remember staring at those images, my hands trembling with fury, my chest tight, as though my heart might burst from the pressure of anger and disbelief. How could he? How could a man who vowed to love and protect her, who promised in front of God and family to cherish her in sickness and in health, choose luxury and laughter while she lay motionless in a hospital bed? I felt something inside me snap. Grief, yes, but beyond that, a fire. A fire of betrayal and rage that I had never felt before in my life. I wanted to march to that yacht, drag him off it, and make him face the reality of what he had done. But I didn't, because I knew this wasn't the moment. Anger without strategy is weakness, and I couldn't afford to be weak when my daughter's life and dignity were on the line. So I sat by her bed. I held her hand tighter. I whispered to her, even though she couldn't respond, don't worry, baby. I'm here. I'll never leave you. And I promise you this, he will pay for what he's done. Not with fists, not with shouting, but with the truth. The truth always wins. Those words became my vow. As the hours dragged on, I thought back to when Sophia was little. I remembered the nights she'd fall asleep on my chest while I read her bedtime stories, I remembered her first bike ride, how she scraped her knee and cried, and how I carried her home in my arms, telling her she was stronger than any fall. I remembered her high school graduation, the pride in her eyes, the way she hugged me and said, "Dad, I couldn't have done this without you." Those memories weren't just nostalgia, they were fuel. Every flashback reminded me why I couldn't let Mark's betrayal go unanswered. Sophia deserved better. She deserved love, loyalty, and respect. And if Mark couldn't give her that, then I, her father, would make sure the world knew exactly what kind of man he really was. That night, as the machines beeped steadily and the nurses checked her vitals, I stepped outside the ICU and pulled out my phone. If Mark thought he could get away with this, he was gravely mistaken. The war for justice had just begun. When you sit in a hospital long enough, time doesn't move normally. The walls close in on you. Minutes stretch into hours, and the only rhythm is the relentless beeping of machines that keep your loved one alive. I barely slept. Coffee kept me awake, but anger kept me alive. And every time I saw Sophia lying there motionless, I remembered the images of Mark smiling on that yacht. That contrast, it haunted me. A husband who should have been broken, devastated, and praying. At her bedside, instead raising glasses of champagne with people who probably didn't even know her name. It was beyond selfish. It was cruel, and I knew this wasn't the first time. Mark had always lived like the world owed him something. Fancy cars, expensive watches, vacations that drained bank accounts. Sophia used to tell me, "Dad, he's just ambitious. He wants to give us a good life." But I saw through it. Ambition is one thing, greed is another. And now I needed proof. So I called an old friend. His name was James Carter. We had served in the Army together when we were young, and while I returned to a quiet life after service, James had taken a different path. He became a private investigator. He picked up on the second ring. "Richard? Been a long time, brother. What's going on?" I hesitated for a moment. How do you even begin a conversation like this? "James, I need your help. It's about my son-in-law." The silence on the other end told me everything. He didn't need details to know this was serious. "I'll meet you. Where are you?" 2 hours later, he walked into the hospital lobby, his trench coat carrying the smell of rain and cigarette. Smoke. Same old James' sharp eyes, always scanning, like nothing ever escaped him. "You look like hell, Richard." "I feel worse," I admitted. We sat in the corner, and I laid it all out. Sophia's condition, Mark's absence, the yacht, the photos. James didn't even blink. He just nodded slowly, like he'd heard 1,000 stories like this before. Men like him always leave a trail. "Question is, what do you want from me?" I clenched my fists. "I want the truth. Everything. Where he's been, who he's with, what he's hiding. If he's betrayed my daughter, I want it laid bare. For the world to see." James smirked faintly. "Good, because once I dig, there's no going back. You sure you're ready for what I might find?" I looked through the glass window at Sophia's pale face beyond the ICU doors. "I'm ready." The next few days were a blur. I barely left the hospital, except to meet James in quiet corners of diners or in the parking lot. Each time he came with new information, and with every word, my anger hardened into something cold to resolve. "First thing," James said, sliding a manila folder across the table, "your son-in-law wasn't just partying. He's got a woman. Shows up in multiple photos. Same girl, always at his side. Young, blonde, expensive tastes." I felt my jaw tighten. An affair. While my daughter was lying in the ICU, he was out there entertaining another woman. "Second thing," James continued, "money. Your daughter's. Accounts, joint accounts, by the way, have been bled dry. Transfers, withdrawals, all in the last 3 months. He's funneled cash into a separate account under his name only. Offshore. Cayman Islands. The air left my lungs. All those nights. Sophia told me, "Dad, don't worry. Mark is handling the finances." And I trusted her happiness. Now I saw the truth. He wasn't supporting her. He was draining her. James leaned back, his voice low. "This isn't just neglect, Richard. This is premeditated. Your son-in-law is planning a life without her. The woman, the money, it all lines up." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I saw Sophia as a little girl again, holding my hand, trusting me to protect her. And here she was, betrayed by the man she trusted most. He chose the wrong family to betray. I muttered. That night, I sat by Sophia's bed again, whispering to her like I had every night. "Baby girl, I know you can't hear me, but I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again. I promise you Sophia Justice is coming." Her hand twitched slightly. Maybe it was the machines. Maybe it was my imagination. But I swear in that moment, she squeezed my hand. It gave me strength. The next step was legal. I called my family lawyer, Michael Graves, a man I'd trusted for years. We met in his office, a tall, quiet man with glasses who always looked like he was solving a puzzle in his head. "Richard," he said after listening to my story, "if what your investigator has uncovered is accurate, we can move fast. Fraud, misappropriation of marital funds, infidelity, it paints a clear picture, but we'll need hard proof admissible in court." I nodded. James is already working on it. I don't just want to protect Sophia's finances. I want the world to see him for what he is. Michael adjusted his glasses. "Then you'll need more than documents. You'll need witnesses, photos, bank records, testimonies, and Richard." He paused, his voice softer. "Are you prepared for how public this will get? Your daughter will have to relive it all when she recovers." I looked him dead in the eyes. Better she relives the truth than lives under his lies. The pieces of my plan were coming together, but true revenge required patience. So I played the part of the grieving, quiet father whenever Mark bothered to show his face at the hospital. And yes, he did show up once in a while. Always with excuses. Always with crocodile tears. "Oh, Richard, I've just been so busy with work. You know how it is. Busy with work." I wanted to laugh in his face. But instead, I smiled faintly, nodded, and said, "Of course, Mark. We're all praying for Sophia." He had no idea what I knew. No idea that while he pretended to care, I was gathering every weapon I needed to destroy him. James delivered the final nail a week later. He handed me a USB drive. "This is it. Photos, videos, financial records, phone logs. It's all here. Enough to ruin him 6 times over." I took it with shaking hands, my chest tight with anticipation. This was it, the arsenal I needed. James placed a hand on my shoulder. "Richard, revenge can eat a man alive if he's not careful. Don't lose yourself in this." I nodded, but my mind was already made up. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. For Sophia. For every tear I shed at her bedside. For every vow Mark had broken. And soon, very soon, he was going to learn what it meant to betray a father's trust. The day finally came. Weeks of waiting, planning, and gathering evidence all led to this moment, the courtroom. I stood outside those heavy oak doors, the same doors I had walked through years ago when I swore to protect my family with everything I had. Today was no different. I glanced at Sophia's photo in my wallet. She was still in the ICU, still fighting, but I carried her strength with me. "This is for you, sweetheart," I whispered. When the bailiff called the session to order, Mark strolled in like he owned the place. Expensive suit, smug grin, sunglasses perched on his head, as if this was some casual business deal. The kind of arrogance only a guilty man could carry. He didn't even look at me. Instead, he winked at his lawyer, a slick young man who probably thought this was just another divorce case. But it wasn't. This was war. The opening arguments were standard, but I barely heard them. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. Then came my lawyer, Michael Graves, calm and deliberate as always. Your Honor, this case is not about a simple marital dispute. This case is about betrayal, deception, and financial abuse during a time of medical crisis. While my client's daughter lay in the intensive care unit, her husband, the defendant, was not by her side. He was out on yachts with another woman, draining her accounts and preparing to abandon her entirely. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Mark shifted in his seat, but still held that cocky smirk. The judge leaned forward. Do you have evidence to support these claims, Mr. Graves? Michael nodded. Yes, Your Honor, and we will present it in full. That was my cue. The first piece of evidence, photographs. Clear images of Mark on the yacht, glass of champagne in one hand, his other arm wrapped around a young blonde woman. The jury's faces said it all. Shock, disgust. The second, financial records. Transfers of thousands of dollars from joint accounts into offshore accounts under Mark's sole ownership. The third, recordings. Phone calls intercepted by James Carter, where Mark bragged about how, once Sophia's out of the picture, I'll finally be free. I will never forget the silence that fell over that courtroom. When those words played. It was like the air itself grew heavier. Mark's lawyer objected, but the judge silenced him with a glare. Overruled. Continue. Mark began to sweat. His smirk was gone now, replaced by shifting eyes and twitching hands. He looked cornered, and he was. Michael pressed on. Mr. Hale, he said, gesturing toward me. As the father of Sophia Hale, can you tell the court how you discovered this information? I stood, my legs trembling but my voice steady. I discovered it the moment I realized my daughter was alone in her fight for life. While I sat at her bedside day and night, her husband was nowhere to be found. I didn't need an investigator to tell me something was wrong. My heart already knew, but I needed proof. So I sought the truth, and the truth revealed everything. My daughter was betrayed by the very man who vowed to love her in sickness and in health. And while she lay dying, he was stealing from her, cheating on her, and planning his escape. The jury's eyes softened, some even glistening with tears. The judge's expression hardened. Mark shifted again, whispering furiously to his lawyer. But it was too late. The truth was out. The climax came when James himself testified. He laid out the timeline, the evidence, the offshore accounts. Every detail meticulously gathered, undeniable and damning. Mark's lawyer tried to twist it, claiming stress drove him to poor choices, that he was coping with his wife's illness in his own way. But the jury wasn't buying it. Neither was I. When it was Mark's turn to speak, he finally cracked. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he stammered. Sophia didn't understand me. She was weak, and that was it. The jury gasped. The judge banged his gavel. You dare call my daughter weak? I thundered before I could stop myself. My voice echoed through the courtroom. The woman fighting for her life in the ICU while you threw parties and stole from her? She's stronger than you'll ever be. The judge didn't reprimand me. Instead, he let the silence hang heavy in the room. Everyone could feel that justice was about to be served. In the end, the verdict was swift. Mark was found guilty of financial fraud, marital misconduct, and breach of trust. His accounts were frozen, assets seized, and his reputation shredded before his very eyes. The young blonde he'd been parading around? She wasn't at the courthouse. She'd vanished the second the money dried up. Mark left the courtroom in handcuffs, his once arrogant head hanging low. The man who thought he could destroy my daughter had destroyed himself instead. Days later, I returned to the hospital with the news. Sophia was still weak, but she had opened her eyes. When I told, her mark was gone. That justice had been served. A single tear slipped down her cheek. "Dad," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Thank you." I kissed her forehead, my own tears falling freely. "No, sweetheart. Thank you for giving me a reason to fight, for reminding me what love truly is." Looking back now, I realize this story isn't just about betrayal, it's about resilience. Betrayal can shatter you. Yes, it can burn your world to ashes. But in those ashes, you can choose what rises. Mark thought he could break us. He thought his lies, his greed, and his arrogance would win. But he forgot one thing: truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you bury it. And justice. Justice always finds a way. So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever felt the sting of someone's lies cutting deeper than any wound, remember this: strength isn't about how loud you fight. It's about how smart you fight. It's about patience. It's about resilience. It's about knowing when to strike, and when you do, striking so hard that betrayal never dares to touch you again. That's what I learned. That's what I lived, and that's the story of how my daughter fought for her life in the ICU, while her husband partied on a yacht, and how I made sure justice was served.